look, I know my son's the offensive coordinator. People are saying, well, you're going to defend your son. That's not the case here. I think once Carr accepts that it wasn't McDaniels why he didn't play. He just didn't play good last year. Like, Josh is to prove himself to be a good coach. I'm not here to shill for him, but
ladies and gentlemen, I think Raiders fans need to move on from Derek Carr. And I think the head coach of the Raiders needs to stop having his friends in the media trash Derek Carr because he's on a new team now. And I think some of these beat reporters need to stop misconstruing these stories that are coming out about Derek Carr talking about last season for their own benefit so they could stroke the ego of the current head coach, genius Josh McDaniels. I have moved all my coverage about Derek Carr on my NFL channel, WiFiWillie NFL. That is where I talk about teams and players who are not a part of the Raiders. But this just keeps coming up again and again and again. And McDaniels, like I've said before, he's kind of a pimp and he's got his hoes in the media that just won't stop hoeing. And meanwhile, Jon Gruden, the former head coach of the Raiders, we have an update on him and we're gonna talk about it. The Raiders have a new strategy ever since they have signed Jimmy Garoppolo, who has not passed a physical yet and may never pass a physical while being a part of the Raiders and may never ever play as the Raiders quarterback. They have a new strategy, which is to lower your expectations and be content with the Raiders failing yet again this year.
Listen, if Josh McDaniels don't turn the team around this year, his ass needs to be fired. He needs to be fired and banned from the NFL. You can't even be an offensive coordinator.
But we already know what the excuse is going to be. Oh, our quarterback was injured. That was our main plan, and so it didn't work out. Oh, well, looks like we're tanking again. And because of this, whenever there's positive news about Derek Carr, the guy who is no longer a part of the team, it seems like there are people in the Raiders media who have to make sure that you still believe in Josh McDaniels more than DC. And you have all these stories in the media talking about Derek Carr's recent press conference with the Saints when he said that the Raiders did not get his best last year. And a lot of people are misconstruing this, that he's completely blaming himself. Like, we haven't heard Derek Carr blame himself for the failures of the team for several years. And we broke this down on our NFL channel. Saints Derek Carr asked why the Raiders failed. And this was actually before all these articles started coming out saying, oh, Derek Carr didn't give it his best. When you really look at the content of what's said, Derek Carr, being the Ned Flanders guy he is, the nicest guy, Oakley Dokley neighbor, you know, he's never going to just straight up say McDaniels was the problem. He's never going to say that this guy did not put him in a position to win. Instead, he's going to say, put it all on me. But when you look at what the guy actually said, it's quite interesting. He said the Raiders did not get his best because there's all these things going around. And the key thing that he said that you should lock in on is the fact that, hey, he was trying to sell the idea of the offense to other players, but they could see on his face that it was tough.
That trying to, get the guys excited about a certain thing or a certain way, even though they could see on my face it was tough and things like that, in certain ways. And, I just didn't feel like myself. And I feel bad to the coaches and the players because they didn't get my best.
This means that he didn't believe in what they were doing. We've heard the reports that Josh McDaniels did not let Derek Carr make adjustments at the line of scrimmage. He has talked more about this since he's joined the New Orleans Saints.
A relationship with like Jon Gruden that you could take 2 or 3 plays to the line and kind of back out of what you didn't want to back out of, and that kind of control you didn't have pushing forward in Las Vegas.
And it's actually insane that he did not let DC make these adjustments, because that ruins pass protections. It makes everything difficult for all the other guys on the football field, not just the quarterback.
Certain defenses where you can play that way and do your best to get us in the proper situation and things like that with checks and all that. That, I think, is what helps not only the quarterback, but it helps the whole football team.
And we know that everybody hates Josh McDaniels. We know that people do not like him. Devontae Adams had to get put in his place after he said, I don't see eye to eye with the front office right now, because the bro signed a contract. They have a restructure. He's stuck, but he still went out of his way to say what he said to the Ringer, and that should mean something. We also have Darren Waller with the Giants saying that the coaches and the players should be together, not clashing, insinuating that, hey, last year they were clashing, and that last year the coaches did not listen to the players, but with the Giants, apparently they do.
Value our opinions here, and as a player, I feel like a lot of places I've gone, it's, you're told to do things a certain way, and you do those things. And coaches and players got to be in partnership. We're all together, and it shouldn't be clashing with each other. We're all going in the same direction.
And you had Derek Carr make these same comments saying that the coaches and players need to be together. It's not us versus them.
I'm trying my best to just unify, and that's with the coaching staff. It's not us versus them. Most success that I've had in this game is when everyone's on the same page, pushing in the same direction. It's not them versus us versus them. It's us against everybody else.
So this just shows that Josh McDaniels creates a culture where the players do not like the coaches. It would be great if this resulted in wins, but Josh McDaniels failed in Denver, and he looks like he's failing again with the Las Vegas Raiders. And it was not only these players, Devontae Adams, Darren Waller, Derek Carr is saying, oh, the coaches versus the players, this is the culture that Josh McDaniels creates. Well, you also have the NFLPA report card. Let's not forget about that golden nugget. When Josh McDaniels was asked about the fact that he doesn't listen to players, multiple players testified to this fact in the NFLPA anonymous report card. Josh McDaniels got a little nervous when this great woman asked this question. He even got so nervous that little genius Josh had to sip on his coffee cup.
Team report cards that the NFLPA put out, they didn't mention every coaching staff, but select coaching staffs, the really good ones and the really poorly rated ones. They mentioned, and yours was mentioned as not using players' times efficiently, and I think it said they felt like you don't listen to them, was what it said in the overview. Did you read that, and what was your reaction to reading that?
I heard it. I didn't read the whole thing. I heard it. I'm aware of that. Obviously, those things aren't, you don't like to hear those things.
So Josh McDaniels has so much riding on this season right now. You got everybody saying that this guy is horrible to work with. You got Josh Jacobs not willing to sign the franchise tag, talking about how everything's sad for real when it comes to being a part of the Las Vegas Raiders. And we all know, everybody knows, everybody could see it from a mile away, other than us diehard Raiders fans who are delusional because our heart bleeds silver and black and we desperately want this team to win. We know deep down in our hearts and minds that it seems like it's a tank season because we do not even have a mother effing quarterback. And the one who knows it the most is one of Josh McDaniels' hoes in the media. Yes. I'm talking about Lombardi, Michael Lombardi, the man.
I know my son's the offensive coordinator, and people are saying, well, you're going to defend your son. That's not the case here. Look, wants to blame Josh McDaniels because Josh McDaniels was a shitty coach in Denver. Okay, well, it's a long time from Denver. Like, don't you think people change and they just want to dump all over Josh, right? Like, Josh is to prove himself to be a good coach. I'm not here to shill for him, but
Lombardi, the man who slandered Darren Waller after Josh McDaniels, traded away Waller on his honeymoon after leaking his wedding to the media when Waller said, hey, please don't leak my wedding to the media. Well, McDaniels did it anyways and traded his ass away. We got Lombardi defending McDaniels in the media after that.
Through Sunday, which were mandated to get off by the league, that was when I proposed to Kelsey. I eventually told Josh, and that's how he knew and was able to, by mistake, tell the reporters that my wedding was happening.
So McDaniels knew he was leaving to propose to Kelsey during the bye week. He wanted to keep it private. He wanted to keep the wedding private, and he had a mandatory 4 days off Thursday through Sunday.
Instead of rehabbing, you went home for 4 days and incurred the fines.
But instead, Michael Lombardi is coming out of nowhere, talking trash, making up fake news about former players just to please his son's boss, Josh McDaniels. And then Lombardi has the nerve to also say, oh, by the way, I'm not just saying this just because my son works there.
It's always the players are right, the coaches are wrong. And I'm not saying this because my son's the coach there.
And you've had Lombardi nonstop talk trash on Derek Carr ever since he was benched by the Raiders. And I wonder why this guy tends to talk trash on players who have a problem with Josh McDaniels. Well, maybe it's because his son is employed by Josh McDaniels, and his son would probably be in the unemployment line if it wasn't for Josh McDaniels. We know Mick Lombardi's not a real offensive coordinator. Josh McDaniels tries to run the offense the best he can. I don't even know if that's working out. But this is sort of a nepotism job, and so Michael Lombardi is going to do whatever he can to make sure that his son's employed, which is why he's meat riding McD 24/7. And so everything that comes out of Michael Lombardi's mouth, he's always defended Patriots guys, he's always defended McDaniels. Everything that comes out of his mouth is a direct representation of what Josh McDaniels thinks, even though he constantly says, I'm not just saying this because my son's the coach there. I'm not just saying this because my son's the coach there. If you have to say that, that means you are obviously saying it because your son's the coach there. But I want you to pay attention to this. Lombardi, his co-host, is a great woman, and they're talking about Derek Carr and the Saints. Lombardi obviously is going to talk mad trash about Derek Carr, but I want you to pay attention to how upset and how angry and the venom that comes out when this woman just makes a very objective statement about Derek Carr and the Saints. Watch.
I think once Carr accepts that it wasn't McDaniels why he didn't play. He just didn't play good last year. Everybody has 1,000 excuses why it happens.
So this is his job. It wasn't McDaniels. It wasn't McDaniels. It wasn't McDaniels. It wasn't McDaniels. Even though the Raiders broke the record in blown double-digit leads, absolutely insane. This is clearly coaching. When your players are leading the game, when your players are winning, when they're keeping it close and actually having a 2-possession lead and you screw it up, I am sorry. That is on coaching. There is no other way to spin it. If there is one thing that you could pin on coaching, it's not being able to manage games. And it's one thing to say, hey, these guys didn't get along, Carr wasn't right for the scheme, but this guy constantly tries to insult Derek Carr's character. They've done this before, trying to say that he's not tough, can't handle criticism, even though the dude was freaking coached by Jon Gruden. How much more tough does it get than that? And then he even goes as far as to say that Derek Carr is not endearing to his teammates, which is just such a complete lie. You have so many former teammates of Derek Carr, people like Amari Cooper, still praising the guy years later, told Cam Jordan in an interview that he was one of his favorite players to play with.
Favorite teammate of all time?
Derek Carr.
Okay.
But Lombardi wants Raiders fans to hate Derek Carr just because it makes McDaniels look good.
Carr going back to Fresno State, he was never one of those guys where you walked off watch the tape, say, man, that guy's endearing to his teammates, you know?
Oh my goodness, bro. Get that dude's meat out of your mouth. And this is crazy because this is when this lady just says the obvious, that the Saints have a way better defense than the Raiders have had throughout all of Derek Carr's career, and so things can be okay. And watch Lombardi just not be able to handle it.
But they brought everybody back. They still have a good defense, which Derek Carr largely hasn't had in his career. It's tough to win games when you have to score 28, 30 points per game. So maybe
you could already just feel Lombardi getting heated there.
Maybe there are some things that'll work in his favor if he can get that system figured out. Let's keep it rolling here.
And so she's trying to keep it rolling. She's trying to move on. And all she said is that they have a better defense than the Raiders have had during Derek Carr's time. And maybe they'll be able to figure it out. Maybe they'll be able to get things rolling. She's not saying they're going to the Super Bowl. She's not saying they're winning the division. She's just saying maybe he'll be better than what he did with the Raiders.
Yeah.
Chiefs.
But before we go to the Chiefs, I want to ask you.
So he just can't handle it. He's got to stop.
Will you bet the over with Derek Carr and 10 wins?
No, I'm just saying I understand
that
they are.
I want it on the table. I want it on the table that you're not going to do that. I think that's important. You know, history says that typically he's never been this kind of guy. I understand he hasn't had a great team.
And it's crazy because he's eating up time. They're supposed to move on to the other team, but he wants to just make sure that everybody does not like Derek Carr and likes Josh McDaniels instead. And he can't even bring himself to allow another individual on the show to just say, hey, things might be okay with the Saints.
Yeah, I think that he's in a better situation.
And here's the thing, Josh McDaniels has just been completely hidden in the media, and so has our new quarterback, Jimmy Garoppolo. You watch all these other teams around the NFL, and they got their new quarterback, whether it be new or the guy they've had before, doing press conferences more than just the introductory press conference when they were first signed on March 13th, March 14th, March 15th. No, they're doing press conferences to let the fans know what's going on with the team, let them know how they're clicking, but instead, there's been dead silence. And here's the thing, the reason why you don't do media, the reason why you don't talk to the press, you can't have an open press conference anymore for people to ask you questions, is because you don't have anything good to report. That's what I truly believe. And Josh McDaniels just seems like he's reluctant to speak to the media. Whenever he's asked a question, you can hear the guy huffing and puffing all day.
Shed some light on the contract, details of it.
And it just makes me nostalgic for when you had a coach who was able to face the media, face the noise whenever anything bad was happening. And you had a quarterback who was able to do that as well. And even though things were not always working out, it always felt like, hey, the players and the coaches are on the same side in unison trying to fight against everybody else. And it always also felt like that Jon Gruden, when he was the head coach of the Raiders, empathized with the fans and the lack of success that was happening rather than having disdain for the fans and resenting the fans and also kicking fans out of the stadium. We had literally fans in Oakland throwing trash at Jon Gruden and Derek Carr when they lost against the Jacksonville Jaguars, but you never had this crazy thing happen where they're just kicking out tons of fans like we saw last year just because they're holding up a sign that's not favorable to the current head coach. And now you have Jon Gruden seem like he's trying to get back into the NFL. He did have some workouts with the Saints. He helped their offense, helped install their offense in New Orleans. And now you have him working with Carson Wentz, who is currently unsigned. He's trying to look back to get part of a football team.
In, out, and in. Push up the field. I'm going to yell, man, 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 man.
And who knows if Jon Gruden goes to another team and has success at all, whether it be as a coordinator or QB coach or anything like that, or a head coach, there's going to be a lot of Raiders fans who are thinking, damn, why did we have that guy removed from our team and now we're stuck with Josh McDaniels? And look, man, I just want to set the expectations high this year. Josh McDaniels has to make the playoffs. He has to have a better year than he did last year to deserve the privilege of being the Raiders head coach. Right now, he does not deserve it. And I feel like what their media team is doing is they want to lower the expectations so fans can't say anything too critical once this ends in a dud. And outlets like the Las Vegas Review-Journal want to take things out of context to make you believe that Derek Carr blames himself rather than having a more nuanced approach as to why the Raiders failed last season. And there is one guy you got to blame if this goes south. Unless we get Tom Brady and the league rigs it for us, I guarantee this season is going to go south. And there's only going to be one guy to blame once the Raiders tank, and that is Mark Davis. Because if the Raiders tank this year and if they have a losing season and Mark Davis comes out there and says more BS like he did last year, which is that Josh McDaniels is doing a fantastic job and he's going to be the head coach for years to come. If all that happens, you should lose respect for your owner, because if the Raiders tank this year, that means that Mark Davis has given Josh McDaniels permission to tank, to waste the time and the lives of fans and players yet again. And here's one thing, man, I'm upset with the Raiders. I don't believe in our head coach at all whatsoever. I think he's a piece of honestly, I don't like him right now, and my mind could be changed. My mind can be changed. But when everybody has a problem with you and you're the consistent thing throughout all these problems, the problem is you. But here's what I'll say to everybody who wants to jump ship. I'm not jumping ship. I will never jump ship. I will always be a Raiders fan until I die. And I want to say it to all the people who want to jump ship right now. There's nothing wrong with having fun and rooting for other players, rooting for other coaches, but do not let this one mother effer Josh McDaniels, do not let him ruin the Raiders for you. Do not let him ruin decades of fandom that you've experienced just like me. Just because you got one coach who's ruining it right now, it should not ruin your lifetime as a Raiders fan. And eventually time will pass. There will be a new coach. Hell, there may even be a new owner, but there is still only going to be one silver and black. My name is WiFiWillie. Peace out, and I hope you have a good one.